Following episode of Critical Weeb Theory has mild references to pedophilia and sexually suggestive language. I feel like that makes it sound worse than it is, but anyway, it's just for your safety. Without further ado, please enjoy.
Into the same trap, like the Orientalist trap that we were just talking about, but like, just like it's like a bigger industry in Japan than it is here in the States. So I was very happy about that, and they were like, "Okay, that's cool." And the reason why it's my second favorite interaction with them, because immediately after I watched The Rising of the Shield Hero, and like the rest is history, because that pissed me off so much. I actually birthed an entire essay persona into existence. Okay. Poggers.
What a transition.
What a transition.
Hello, everybody.
Hello. How's everyone doing? I ask as though anyone can respond to an audio recording.
It is a message through time that we are sending into the future of what, like 4 days? We're recording this on Saturday. Well, actually it's Saturday for me. It's like Sunday for you. Weird. Anyway, yeah, this is the fabled Vibe podcast, Take Two. If you don't know why, no big deal. We have this podcast and another one before we take a break for December, and we'll be back in January with more amazing CWT content. So thanks so much for sticking with us.
Yeah, these few episodes, I have no idea how many we ended up actually doing, have been, I think, pretty enlightening. Sort of in figuring out what our capabilities are, how much we can do to like account for IRL stuff. So this was a pretty good test run of CWT, and it'll be nice to be able to apply everything we learned come the new year.
Yeah. I'd like to take a moment to thank our patrons, but especially the patrons who pledged recently or updated their pledges, because thanks to you guys, we now do indeed have enough of a like monthly revenue coming in to make looking for a podcast hosting service viable. So thank you so much.
It's amazing. We love you all.
Yeah. By January, when it comes back, it's going to be like a whole new thing. We're going to have a bunch of new stuff planned. I'll do the transcriptions finally. Yeah, I've been really, there's a backlog. But yeah, it's like the new year is going to be such an amazing time for CWT. I really love doing this. Raghava really loves doing this.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
Shall the vibes commence? Or was there another important announcement?
The other important announcement is about our Darling in the Franxx. That's right. The fabled Darling in the Franxx episode. Would you like to tell us all about it?
Darling. Sorry. I need to do it. It's very fun. So yeah, we are planning, and there'll be also another announcement on this, but we are planning this Friday to do a special live episode of CWT, which is just me tearing into Darling and Franxx with Raghava for as long as we can possibly make it. We'll probably talk about Conception 2 a little bit, but I think given the positive response of how
I think we're going to talk about Conception 2 a lot.
Oh, yeah.
Not necessarily because it's... Well, they are comparable, but that's not why we're talking about Conception 2, right? We're talking about Conception 2 because it's really fun to just dig into Conception 2.
It's fun but cursed.
Right, like absolutely, you could talk about Darling in the Franxx without talking about Conception and Conception 2, and apparently you're told there's a third one, but like why, right? Where is the joy in your life?
Right. So that's going to be indeed the last episode for the before the break. So if you are if you're interested in stopping by, make sure to follow me on Twitter. I'll have the information for when, and also check on this channel because we'll also give you the information for when it's going to be and how that's going to work.
Or you could join the Discord.
Oh yeah, that too.
Or you could join the Discord.
Wait, this is so cool. I can say, look at the link now, and then I'll edit in the actual sushi thing that I usually edit, except at that specific spot, and it'll be like
amazing.
Cool. Yeah. Alrighty. So let's vibe. What have we been up to lately besides?
Well, I think in our last vibe episode, right, we had a really great talk about Darker Than Black.
Oh yeah.
I want to kind of talk about it again. For no reason other than today, a member of our Discord server asked what our anime of the year was. Oh, and my gut response was to answer Darker Than Black, even though it did not air this year.
That's kind of depressing.
What do you mean that's kind of depressing? That's just because I'm not. Another thing... I don't know, so Darker Than Black interests me. I want to talk about it as it relates to Hero Hei.
Wait, I can call him a motherfucker. This is my show. That motherfucker?
Yeah, talk to me about it.
Yeah.
Because you've seen more Hero Hei than I have.
Yeah. What was my...
By which I mean you've seen it at all.
Because I can't not every once in a while I check in. Wait, let me open his channel so I can roast this dude. But basically Hero Hei is a tasteful Japanese culture channel. And by that I mean basically he never actually talks about anime. Like it's weird. Like even like I am like an explicitly political content creator, and like this podcast is putting all of the politics into all of the anime, but we do talk about anime. Like we did. We're gonna talk about Darling in the Franxx on Friday. We're gonna talk about Dark and Black right now. We've already talked about Black Lagoon. Like I do episodes and I do things on anime. But like Hero Hei has never once made a video about anime. It's always like weird like culture stuff. Like, okay, let's look at his channel.
But I think there is something worthy of note and respect about someone who like legitimately talks about culture, and like what that means. But like all of his culture stuff is just fake, made up bullshit.
Yeah, and it's bullshit specifically to like agitate fascism, and that sounds weird. That sounds like how do you agitate fascism just by talking about how bad Ruby is? Or how do you agitate fascism by like talking about Uzaki-chan or whatever? And how he does it, how he does it is the terminally stuck in 2015 strategy of just like vaguely gesturing. So first of all, you start with a fan base that has very little going on in their lives other than their one hobby, which is liking anime. And then you say all the people who are trying to ruin anime are this like secret cabal of like SJW activists who hate you. and suddenly, bada bing, bada boom, to defend the sanctity of your right to like anime girls with big boobs, you are suddenly like thrust into this rabbit hole of like, well, I don't like anything that's PC, which of course means you're like anti-socialist, you're anti-racist, which is just racist. You support like it's you have to have seen his videos, I think, for this to make any sense.
I think a thing I want to draw a comparison with is this idea of we talked about manufactured consent in a previous episode.
Oh yeah.
And I think a lot of this is very true about the way in which Hero Hei and his ilk talk about weebs, where it's like, weebs destroy Crunchyroll, which, if you think about it for even one moment, considering how big of an institution Crunchyroll is and how much it makes, right? It's absolutely ridiculous that, like, weebs as a whole are destroying Crunchyroll. Of course, the critical point of nuance to note is, who are we defining weebs as? For example, is defining weebs as people who, if Hero Hei is defining weebs as people who agree with his points, of course, by definition, weebs agree with his point. And a lot of it is sort of like cultivating an audience, cultivating an opinion, and in a sense, this sort of metaphorical astroturfing of making his perspective seem more prominent and more, I want to say, relevant, popular.
Right. Yeah, like that's the thing. If you define, this reminds me of the whole. So there'll be content warnings at the beginning of this, as we usually do. But I want to make like a special note here for like, kind of harmful language coming up. But there was a whole on one of the anime meme subreddit. There was a whole thing where the moderators banned a harmful word used to refer to trans people, and a lot of people, including Hero Hei, but like a lot of people in that subreddit, they like lost their shit over not being able to use this word. And I guess I can talk about this without actually using the word. So I don't know. We'll see how this looks like in the final version. But they lost their shit over not being able to use this word, right? And the thing that they said over and over again is, people like, our community likes using this word. It's people from outside the community that don't like it. But like, the only people in anime spaces who care about using or not using this word are trans people who watch anime. They're in the community by definition. Like, no like trans person who hasn't seen anime is gonna like enter into a fucking subreddit and then go like, stop using this word. It's trans. It is a part of the community. So like, what Hero Hei will do is he'll define away like marginalized people and leftists from weebdom. He'll basically say like, the only real weebs, like, if you're trans, you can't be a real weeb. If you're a woman, you can't be a real weeb.
I would
if
offer
any of this stuff
a
bothers you can't be a real weeb.
modification to that idea of, if you're trans, you can be a real weeb as long as you're okay with using transphobic language. Or if you're a woman, you can be a real weeb. You just have to agree. I did a thread on representation a while ago, and I'm still incredibly proud of it. It's my pinned tweet. But
it was a good thread.
It's that same idea of marginalized people can be accepted into these people at the effectively crypto-fascists' view of what weeb culture is, on the contingent that they assimilate into that hegemony.
Right. Yeah, so there's this one video that's really good. It's bad, of course. Everything on this dude's fucking channel is bad. But he had this video, Base Japan, that he released on the 17th of November.
Did we never talk about, by the way, did we never talk about the Orientalist defense? We'll get to it.
Oh,
This is the perfect
I guess
time.
we didn't. We'll get to it. Yeah, so I'll explain what the video is first, and then we'll keep going. But basically, Base Japan is the one fucking clip from Konosuba. If you've seen my Konosuba, if you've seen Volume 2 of Bullshit no Yusha, or you've like been around anime spaces, you know which clip of Konosuba it is. It's the one from season 2 when Megami and one of the female characters and Kazuma, the main character, they get back from fighting frogs and they're like covered in slime, and they both want to go to the bath. And Kazuma wants to go to the bath first, and Megumin says, "Shouldn't I go first since it's ladies first?" And Kazuma goes on this whole rant where he's like, I believe in true gender equality. I have no patience for one who talks about female privilege when it suits them and then complains about not being a man when it's convenient. And all these fucking 2-bit low-life fucking absolute I don't want to use I won't okay, but just like these like really infuriating people will like jack off to this scene, I guess, at night. Just like, oh yeah, that's so cool, that's so base. Oh my god, he really put that woman in his place. This is just like what feminism is. Oh yeah. And like every once in a while, some channel or other will repost this scene onto YouTube and it'll get like a couple thousand views. And all the comments all the time are just men like, oh yeah, real gender equality means I get to hit women. And it's like ugh, right. So that's the clip. Hero Hei, being even more incompetent than that, what he does is he posts not the video but just him talking over the video about how it's funny, and then he picks out one of the comments that says, actually, in Konosuba, you're not supposed to idolize Kazuma, guys. He's a loser on purpose, guys. It's satire. You're not supposed to identify with Kazuma, which I think is like...
It's on the list of very untenable positions, yeah.
It is, but like, it's better than actually just being unironically sexist, and he just kind of laughs at it, right? But you can kind of see, like, this video is not meant to be good. Like, what the video does is it essentially offers, like, a platform for people who are right-wing to, like, agitate around, right? So he doesn't, like, say anything. Okay. No, I was just saying sorry because, like, I hit play by accident, and then I heard Hero Hei's voice, and I thought you were talking, so then I stopped, and then okay. Anyway.
Oh, no. Have I fallen?
You guys don't sound the same. You don't sound the same. It's just like when I heard someone talking, I like reflexively stopped. But Hero Hei doesn't do any of the political stuff. He just says, he's just asking questions, you know, right? Isn't it totally funny and cool, the scene from Konosuba? And then, hey, look at this SJW. He disagrees. Isn't that lame? Anyway, see you guys for the next video. And then all the comments. If you hate women or men, you're sexist. If you hate both, you're an advocate of true gender equality. They hated Kazuma because he spoke the truth. Kazuma is a true advocate of gender equality. True gender equality is something only Kazuma would be able to bring. They hate him because he spoke the truth. I yearn for true gender equality. We all do, sure. Kazuma is pathetic. Isn't the whole point of the show that everyone is pathetic, including the woman?
It's interesting, right? We've talked about this before.
Yeah.
But how Konosuba preserves its power structures and relationship dynamics between characters. So we wanted to talk about the Orientalist defense, yes? Yeah.
You can launch it.
The Orientalist defense is a thing I've come to claim in which right-wing reactionaries use the language barrier and their minimal understanding of cultures other than America to make Japan seem like a right-wing holy ground. We see this in which we talk about the base Japan with the Kazuma Konosuba clip, right? No person thinking rationally would ever like look at a clip from like a TV show, right? Like imagine someone just watched a clip of Blue Bloods, the fascist propaganda TV show, and was like, yeah, all Americans think what's in this one TV show. And especially with a medium as niche as anime, right? It's incredibly difficult to even like observe a single anime and be like, this anime is reflective of a broader culture. But what the Orientalist defense will sort of do is it'll say, well, you can't critique this anime for being sexist because that's just how Japan is. Japan is just sexist. That's what it is. And there's a lot of things that does. One, it erases the work of actual feminists living in Japan, because those people do exist. And two, it feeds into right-wing propaganda narratives by, like, fascists within Japan itself.
Yeah, that's really that's really the big thing, because this is kind of I don't like, obviously I don't live in Japan or speak Japanese, but I have like watched a couple of interesting videos. If I can find them, I'll put them in the description. But there are videos of like people who like moved to Japan and like live there, and they talk about like how like otaku are like seen in Japan. And it turns out that a lot of like the negative stereotypes that people have about anime fans in the States, people also have those same stereotypes in Japan. That like that like a lot of anime is made for like weirdo, like misogynist men who kind of just stay in their room and like have like their 500 figurines, and they don't know how to interact with people, and they like have really bad relationships with women that make everyone uncomfortable. Like, those attitudes exist in Japan as well as in the United States, because it turns out no matter where you are, writing that like dehumanizes, devalues, and decommodifies 50% of the population does that like everywhere. And people who are not keen to that, no matter where you are, pick up on it. And people who are keen to that, no matter where you are, don't. It's like, it's as simple as that. Just the absolute racism in just saying that like, oh, Japan is like, it's just like a primitive and backwards place where they don't believe gay people are people. You can't criticize that. Fuck you. That's not true. And yes, I can.
Like, there are literally like gay LGBTQ plus people in Japan like fighting for rights and acceptances. Who are you to say that they like don't exist? And obviously, the only reason they can say this is because they're talking about a foreign culture and deliberately exoticizing it.
Like a shield, like against criticism. Well, both as a shield against criticism, but also I think like the logical extension that I've seen from this is like the logical conclusion that I've seen from like this Orientalist attitude is not actually from Hero Hei, but like from a different, although I think maybe less overtly fascist, but like a different YouTube channel called Clownfish TV, which I still have to deal with this, but they featured one of my articles in one of their videos recently, which was very funny to me. I lost it. I was having such a good time. But they do a similar shtick to Hero Hei. This is a very profitable business. But their whole thing is that essentially like Western culture is like on the decline, and like Western media is like, it's all like cucked and terrible and like run by like cultural Marxists or whatever. And so the only media that we can enjoy that's left is Japanese media, and so we must protect it at all costs from the same social forces here in the West that ruined our once great movies and TV. It's such like a weird and like nonsensical position to hold. I don't it's like it's just so detached from reality. Like when I see these like fucking I shouldn't say white, I don't know if they're white or not, but like when I see these fucking like 20-year-old like fucking regular ass people who just live in the States talking about how like the West has never produced anything good, and like Japan this and Japan that, and the Japanese don't know, like, you don't speak the language, you've never been to the country, you literally only know this culture from what is essentially like a niche market in a country thousands of miles away from where you live. What are you doing? What are you doing with your life? What? What is this? How does this make any sense? It doesn't, of course. It's just racism, and it's just racism weaponized to like peddle fascism is what you're doing. Like when you peddle all this like anti-socialist, like racist, like sexist, like anti-PC shit, like all you're doing is helping fascists. And if that sounds harsh and you don't like fascists, you can just stop. You could have any other political persuasion. You can have our political persuasion. It doesn't really matter. Just stop doing this one.
Yeah. So that's our talk about.
That was fun. Let's keep vibing.
So what we did a while ago was when we had done our last Vibe episode, we started by looking through. There was this meme going around on Twitter called "Describe your favorite anime in the most boring way possible." We talked a while about Hero Hei, but I feel like talking about Hero Hei is itself not doing justice to what we would really like to talk about, which is Darker Than Black.
Yes. Much more pleasant.
So where do we even start with Darker Than Black? So Darker Than Black, we actually have an interest. I actually have a minor side note I want to do.
Yeah, go ahead.
So the first anime I ever watched was Darker Than Black. It was like 2 a.m. It was in India. And I couldn't sleep, I think because of jet lag. It just landed. I was bored. So I turned on the TV, and it was turned to Animax, and I watched episodes 4 and 5 of Darker Than Black.
When you introduced me to Darker Than Black, I'm pretty sure you introduced me on episodes 4 and 5 for this exact reason.
I think we've so Mo and I binged the entirety of Darker Than Black like a couple of summers ago, because I wanted to write an essay about it at that time, and like a lot of my writing projects, it's still on firmly the to-do list. But I want to briefly take a moment to ask, hey Mo, what was your first anime viewing experience?
Oh man, I've always been a little insecure about this, because the thing, and I shouldn't be.
No, you shouldn't be insecure about this at all. People definitely respect you way more as an anime fan than they respect you.
You should say that, but I guess the thing that I've always been worried about reactionaries doing with my work, and to be honest, something that they have done, is basically say like, you're not allowed to be upset about a thing, you're not allowed to have an opinion about a thing, because you're like not like a real anime fan, because you haven't been in the process long enough. There's you could write a whole essay about this, but like there's a whole trend of like weebs who will basically like say like all like the most problematic aspects of anime can basically just be explained away if you're in the culture long enough. So like if you're in the culture long
enough, I mean, if you're in the culture long enough to just like accept it, right?
Yeah. So like
you just become used to it.
Yeah, so like the meme is always like
like weird ships, like incest or whatever. But what it really is like for example, like female objectification, like fan service, or like a lot of like the transphobia that we were mentioning earlier, and like stuff like that. Things that like as long as you're a fan long enough, as long as you're a fan long enough, that just like won't bother you because it's not actually a big deal. It's just like partying. Like this is a bit of a tangent, but I promise it's related to what I'm about to tell you. So like, if you ever wonder why like anime fans will like insist on things like lolicon and like shotacon instead of what it actually is, which is just like pedophilia, it's just because like lolicon and shotacon is just like an anime in joke that you get, and you kind of sidestep the entire issue of like, okay, a lot of these shows like have bad relationships with minors and they participate in cultures that exploit minors. Shouldn't we do something about that? Anyway, my first anime that I ever watched was actually in late 2018.
It was like this. Oh yeah, it was very late.
Yeah. I had before then I had like been in like anime adjacent spaces, and
I mean,
like,
you were
my friend
friends
group
with
in high
me.
school. Yeah, I was friends with Raghavat. If it wasn't for Raghavat, I wouldn't be here. So I was friends with Raghavat.
So
and I
now
was friends
you
with
know
their friends.
who's really responsible.
No, true, honestly. Honestly, I'll totally give you that.
Oh no!
No.
Yeah, carry on.
Because if it wasn't for you, like I wouldn't have started writing. I would have just like kept it all in my head. But
yeah, I mean, I will gladly take responsibility for pressuring you over several weeks to like actually write that goddamn Shield Hero essay.
yeah, it turned out to be such a good idea. I love it. I love doing this. But I remember in high school you talking about like Legend of Galactic Heroes and how we should watch it together.
Dude,
and I was like, yeah, okay.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
It was
remember?
like right at the tail end of high school, right? I think like either directly before or directly after we graduated. Because up until that point, you had been the sort of like, I'm not really into anime sort of guy.
Yeah.
And I was like, wait, we could watch Legend of the Galactic Heroes. Because I know you don't really like anime, but this seems like the sort of thing you would enjoy. And I've been meaning to watch it forever, but I'm bad at things. I was actually really good at watching anime back in high school. I watched like a ton of things, and then like once I graduated, I just kind of realized that binging
like,
a bunch of anime was like not worth my time, and I could instead spend it doing other things. It's not really the point.
Yeah. And so essentially what happened in late 2018 was, so I was like sort of generally aware of like anime culture, but I hadn't like sat down and like watched anime. And so basically I was in a conversation with a couple of people in my dorm, and they wanted to make like a spoof, like a spoof film featuring ourselves as characters in the film. And people wanted two things. They wanted it to have like an actual story, and they wanted it to be like an anime parody. But I was, even though I hadn't seen anime, I was like the best writer, and B, the only person who even vaguely knew things about anime culture that were like accurate. So like they would like say stuff, and I would like kind of like take their ideas and kind of like push them to be like stories that are actually workable. And they liked them so much, and they're like, since you're a writer and the only weeb here, you should actually write the script for it. And I was like, haha, sure. And I was like, crap, I'm not a weeb. Am I? So I sat down. I was like, okay, what's the basic anime? My Hero Academia. So I watched that. I didn't really like the first season. Second season, I liked much more. Then I was like, cool, what else? Kill la Kill. I heard Digine liked that. So I watched Kill la Kill. Liked it. And I was like, I think what was the first thing I texted you? It was something like, "Oh, I just watched My Hero Academia in like December of 2018,"
And it was
and
like
you were
me
like,
who was like, "You watched an anime?"
and I was like, "I know, right?" I'm shocked myself.
And then 2 years later, we ended up here.
We did. I remember. I won't get into it as much as I did the first time we recorded this, but I think one of my favorite interactions. I think it's my second favorite interaction. My first favorite interaction is with that Sceptile fanfic, but we don't actually have to talk about that.
You can't just say that. You can't just say that. You have to leave that in.
We have to cut it.
No, we can't. There's no way that's okay to cut that.
Holy shit. But,
wait, how did that happen?
I have no idea. I was just thinking about it.
No.
I was like
how
making
did you
like
watch that? And like, what was the sequence of events that led up to you reading Sceptile?
I have no idea.
I remember that it happened.
Oh man. Okay.
My phone background is still Sceptile in a bathing suit. I'm going to screenshot it and send it to you, and then Bo will put it in the video so that all of you can judge me.
Sure.
So my lock screen is Hei from Darker Than Black.
Mm-hmm.
And
Naturally.
my window is Sceptile.
Oh, that was such a wild ride. Oh, that was precious.
It was absolutely fucking poggers. I know we were about to like eventually get around to talking about Darker Than Black, but do we want to like briefly talk about that time someone tried to claim poggers was racist? Well, like someone tried to claim that woke people were trying to claim poggers was racist.
Oh yeah. Okay, I'll finish this thought first because we were derailed by the Sceptile. But basically, my second favorite interaction that I've had with Rockwood was them asking me, have you regretted like falling into the rabbit hole of anime yet? And I said no. I'm having a good time. I like animation. They just sent it to me.
I'm going to find the artist credit for that.
Yeah, sure thing. But they asked me if I regretted it, and I said no because I really like animation, and like the only like Western animation stuff that we have is like Cartoon Network and Disney XD. And so I basically only, to get my animation fix at the time, basically all I had was like Star versus the Forces of Evil, which and Steven Universe, which alright, but you know, But there was like so much like variety and intrigue in anime, like a whole genre of like animated content that like did things that I don't want to fall into the same trap, like the Orientalist trap that we were just talking about, but like just like it's like a bigger industry in Japan than it is here in the States. So I was very happy about that. And they were like, okay, that's cool. And the reason why it's my second favorite interaction with them, because immediately after I watched The Rising of the Shield Hero. And like the rest is history. Because that pissed me off so much. I actually birthed an entire essay persona into existence. Okay. Poggers. What a transition.
What a transition. What a transition. Like, I like that we had, like, the first thing, and then, we had our first recording, and then my mic cut out.
Yeah.
And then, now we have the second recording, and it's impressive how different the vibes are.
Yeah, like we're still vibing, but like the vibes are different, and I appreciate that. So, with Poggers, there's this account that only has
Okay,
one post.
I found the link. I found the link.
Okay, cool.
It's by someone whose profile is literally like Yukai 2015.
Okay, nice. They really like Sceptile. Huh? Sceptile's a cool Pokemon. Look, I'm not gonna diss Sceptile.
It's my favorite Pokemon, and that's why that's my lock screen.
But yeah, so there's this account that's like they posted recently like a whole thread on how like Poggers is racist because it's like yellow face and
Ooh, this is actually probably good for a deeper conversation about what digital blackface or digital yellowface actually ends up meaning, and then eventually we will get to dark and black.
okay.
If only out of necessity at this point.
Sure. So what they were saying, it was this whole thread, and it used like kind of woke sounding language to like talk about how like Poggers is racist because like it was used in like a racist context on Twitch for like Pog or whatever, and because of that, if you must use an emoji, please use an emoji of your own race only, right? The thing about it is that if you're actually like, you know what? Fuck it. I'm using woke unironically. If you're actually woke, because I'm reclaiming woke from like fragile white people who think like woke means, I don't know, whatever bad thing that reactionaries think of. Woke actually just means like you're aware of like systemic oppression. And I'm aware of systemic oppression because I'm looking for it. And I'm not like trying to be willfully ignorant up here, right? Okay? So
right.
Yeah, but anyway, like people who are actually woke read this thread and they're like, this is fucking bullshit. This is not how any of this works, right? Besides the fact that they got like basic things wrong about like the origins of PogChamp and Poggers, like the emote, like things that you could like Google and find it. They also, as we'll talk about, they deeply misunderstood what people mean when they say like digital yellowface and digital blackface. The point of like online anti-racism, because like the big meme for the right is that anti-racists they want segregation again, right? So of course when they're parroting us, they're gonna be like, they want to stop white people from using emojis that are not of their race ever, right? But like it's not.
That's not really what people. Okay.
That's not what we mean when we say like digital blackface.
Right. Digital blackface can be a couple of things. I think Aurora, who I respect very much, and she's a wonderful person, and actually going to ask her if she's okay with us quoting her here, but I think her what she posted a while ago, the server we're in, is which I think sums it up pretty well, is the general theory / idea is that popular gifs of black people often reinforce certain caricatures and stereotypes of black people, Yas queens and strong black women, for example. And there's been some research, largely by black women, that links to the popularity of certain gifs to minstrelsy. and that white people generally use GIFs of black people for cool factor. Also, data around certain GIF and meme usage shows that very few black people use certain GIFs, memes, or images of black people, but that the vast popularity of it is because of white people using the image. Thus, the don't use black GIFs if you're not black is an attempt to reclaim power in how black people wish to be viewed online, whether in GIF or meme through awareness. This extends further out globally because countries without a large black population, people are first introduced to what black people are like through GIF and meme online and other media. Thus, the ways in which black people are caricatured online often leads those people to have a completely unreal and often deeply stereotyped idea of black people. This issue is also unfortunately one that's been one of those situations where black women did the work and white people started parroting it for clout. And I think she said it better than I could there.
Yeah, she's very smart.
Yeah.
But I just, like, as you can see, like, the issue is not, like, oppressing white people by telling you what gifts you can or can't use, like, just because. There's actually a very nuanced and complicated problem, which is that some specific uses of gifts of people of color are used to reinforce stereotypes, and as such, we should maybe be more careful about it. And a general rule of thumb could be something that looks like that. But that's very different than just saying, like en masse never do it because it's always racist.
Right. Like, poggers, using poggers as an emote isn't, like, strictly yellow. Like,
it doesn't have that history of
you'd have to
like
analyze
characters. You'd have to look at the history of PogChamp.
Power
You have to
dynamics
analyze the data. Yeah.
or stereotypes are being enforced, right? Does anyone look at PogChamp and go, well, this is, like, pushing a narrative about Asian people? I mean, maybe, but that's something worth looking into. By contrast, if we look at, like, all of those Yas queens, right? Like, that is very much pushing forward a stereotype of black people.
Yeah. Or like a lot of the memes that kind of use AAVE rather liberally. Or like the worst example of this, I think at least before they actually clamped down on it, it used to be like Black People Twitter, the subreddit. And Black People Twitter was really just white people kind of saying, haha, isn't it funny how black people talk like this? And like saying the N-word undercover of this and that. And then eventually what the mods decided to do was you could send them a picture of your forearm to like prove that you were black. And then you would get like a special status. And then for threads that were kind of controversial, they just lock them down and make them black people only. And this like infuriated the fuck out of white Redditors. Like they were seething over the idea that a subreddit would like enforce those standards. Isn't it racist? Isn't it segregation? Isn't it this? Isn't it? But the thing is, it worked. Black People Twitter has been a much better subreddit ever since that change was instituted. So it's the same thing with the whole like digital blackface thing. It's like, well, you can hand wring and whinge all you want, but there's a specific problem that exists, and there's a specific solution that exists.
On that note, I do want to comment because I don't know. Well, I want to admit that I don't know too much about like where people stand on this, but I do know that like there are some ways in which, you know, send a picture of yourself to prove your ex can lead to
it can.
Gatekeeping, like especially
yeah.
I know this happens a lot with like trans people. If you want, if it's like if you have like a women only space on a server and they're like, well, you need to send like a picture of yourself to prove you're a woman, or like a sound of your voice, like that has its own implications. But that's not really the point we're making. I just felt it was important to bring it up.
Oh no, yeah, that's important to bring up too, because I think they're. I'm not saying that what Black people Twitter did was like completely unproblematic or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
What I am saying is that there are cultural issues where there's a problem, and then where marginalized people try to implement some solution that's maybe flawed in its own way, but it is a genuine attempt to fix a genuine problem. And then what people will do is they'll hop onto the solution, ignore that the problem exists, and like straw man that solution out of proportion, and then start whining about like irrelevant bullshit, right? And that's kind of to go back to Pogger's girl in quotes. It was definitely just like some white neckbeard on 4chan, but I don't really have the proof of who it was or not. They presented themselves as a girl when they did this trolling attempt, but that's kind of what Pogger's person did, basically. They took all the nuance out of like an existing problem, and then they took the solution that sounds ridiculous unless you actually know the context behind it, and they spun it up, and now they created the perfect caricature for right wingers to latch onto and be like, isn't it wild that all the SJWs believe this? And in fact, to bring it full circle, Hero Hei indeed does have a video on his channel about exactly that. So there you go, like an obvious troll.
So really what I'm reading is that like we've spent about 50 minutes and we haven't even talked about my boy Hei, the actual Hei, and not Hero Hei, the blasphemer who tarnished my boy's name.
Exactly. Let's launch into
Hero Hei has tarnished Hei's name more than all of Darker Than Black Season 2, and that's saying something. Yeah, I think when there was that meme going around about explain your favorite anime poorly, I explained Darker Than Black by saying Guy has existential crisis over whether or not he is a murderer, which I think is not an acceptable bad summary. I think the current bad summary I would use is most of the episodes aren't really about the protagonist except for the last few. I think that works in its favor. Darker Than Black is a show I always have trouble summarizing because I feel like I never know how to talk about plot summaries and these sorts of things. It's very much a supernatural setting in a way that feels very grounded and realistic. There are believable reasons and ways in which superpowered people are kept secret from normal people. And I think what I really like is the way in which the show talks about what it means to be human, in a sense. I think what it means to be human is a very difficult question to really sell a show on, because oftentimes you can see that question presented and sort of that is a thinly veiled form of anti-blackness. We see this a lot in, for example, Joseph Conrad's Heart of Darkness, where humanity is associated with whiteness compared with the bestial quality of the African black people of that story. But Darker Than Black's view of humanity is, I think, considerably more nuanced and more interesting, in which it sort of argues that everyone is worth saving and everyone matters. And I think the most fundamental way in which it argues this is by giving every single side character, every single character who has named lines, a personality and a story. Hei, in his free time, lives as undercover effectively as a university student in a dorm. And at first, his dorm mates are portrayed as loud and noisy, but later, like, we find out that they all, like, have stories and personalities and things going on with their lives. And I think that's because Darker Than Black is a show that fundamentally has a vested interest in telling those sorts of stories about people. You might note I've told you basically nothing about the plot, but I feel like fundamentally that's what this show is to me.
Yeah, I think that's a really good. I think that's a really good summary of what I experienced watching Darker Than Black and like the absolute emotional devastation of some of the episodes.
Yeah,
just overall,
it's got good action sequences. It's got a soundtrack by Yoko Kanno, which I really love. Hei
soundtrack slaps.
Always sits as a believable character. The show is also very good at telling you sort of how it feels. Like early in the show, like in literally the first episode, we're told that dolls, which is a form of being in this world, have no free will and they can't feel emotions and they can't think. And then in the second episode, that's like thrown out the window. And we see this happen a lot, of like a lot of these preconceived notions that these people don't deserve agency or that these people don't deserve autonomy turn out to be false. Because dolls do have agency and they do have emotion and they do have autonomy, and that should be respected.
Right. Yeah. I think I've seen a lot, because there's a lot of shows that do this thing where they like introduce like a humanoid species that's like, oh, it's human, but they have no feelings or emotions. They're just completely logical and okay with killing. And like Darker Than Black like pretends to do it, and then it subverts it, because it's like it has a thing or two to say about that whole idea. And I will always appreciate Dark and Black for that alone.
Yeah, for sure. I think in a deeper sense, right? There's a lot of ways in which, for example, Now here's the thing that I'm just thinking about now, which I need to rewatch the show to think about, but a lot of times characters who are emotionless are often used as parallels for neurodivergence.
Oh, yeah.
And usually what this does is it dehumanizes them by portraying them as non-human. And I wonder, one, can that parallel be made in the context of Darker Than Black? And two, if the parallel can be made, is Darker Than Black saying that those that neurodivergent people or people who process emotions in different ways than other people are, deserving of the same care and compassion, or does it fall into ableist tropes? Well, I needed a reason to rewatch the show.
Yeah, we need to rewatch the show and actually give it a think, because I think that's an interesting question. You can let us know in the comments though if you've actually thought about this before. If you happen to have, you can let us know. But we could definitely use an excuse to rewatch the one and only season of Darker Than Black. So, we can, if we want, bring up one more thing, or we can end it. We're an hour out.
I do have a few more things. Darker Than Black has my favorite death scenes. Anything I've ever seen.
Oh, yeah.
It does not waste death, and I think it's very cool at that. Darker Than Black has no glaring social issues I can remember. It's not like my Steins Gate recommendation where I have to be like, oh, by the way, watch out for the transphobia, or watch out for the sexism. Shows actually just competently written. There was only ever one season of Darker Than Black. If anybody tells you there was 2 seasons, run away. If someone tells you the problem with the second season was that Hei wasn't as badass, and not the fact that they made my boy into an abusive alcoholic who beats children, also run away. We just pretend that never happened.
Absolutely. I'm thinking of
One day
I'm
we
thinking
will
of Guy
also
Wears
watch.
Mask.
You're thinking of what now?
Because we were doing like the bad anime descriptions, and I described decadence as like girl gets a job as like a janitor and she wants to be an exterminator, and you're like, that's like saying darker than black is Guy Wears Mask. So anyway, Guy Wears Mask is one of my favorite anime.
Yeah. No. I had one more thing to say about it. We'll come to the one saving grace of Darker Than Black Season 2, which I will now continue to go back to disavowing in just a moment, is that its opening was by Stereopony, and that introduced me to Stereopony, and Stereopony is a band I like.
Okay. Yeah. We couldn't do this last time, but do we want to rapid fire fall 2020, or do we just want to stick to the good shows?
I've only seen the good shows, so
okay. So we'll talk about the good shows, and then I'll rapid fire as many as I humanly can.
I'm just going to talk about Jujutsu Kaisen here.
Okay, sure.
Jujutsu Kaisen is my anime of the year, not because I necessarily think it's the most well-crafted anime I've seen all year. I don't even know what I would answer to that question or how I would even begin answering it, but because the viewing experience of Jujutsu Kaisen has been my favorite viewing experience of the year. And I think in that context, like, especially since just in this past week, I've watched episodes of Jujutsu Kaisen to, like, de-stress from immensely, like, exhausting periods of work. So I think for that reason alone, like, I have a great emotional connection to it. It's capable of being very clever and bringing up very interesting philosophical ideas, which I could talk a lot about. It has some of the best written characters. My one big criticism of Jujutsu Kaisen that I don't see going away, though, is the gendered approach to its power. In that Jujutsu Kaisen is capable of writing very interesting, strong characters and very interesting, comparatively weak characters. But the distribution of those characters is like strong characters like Yuji, Gojo, and Nanami Kento are all male, whereas weak characters, like diegetically weak characters like Nobara, Maki, and Mai, female.
Yeah.
And that dynamic exists, and they're both well written, I won't deny it. But that doesn't change the differential. It feels a lot like it just fell into a shonen trap, and that it really didn't have to.
Yeah, there's definitely... I think in a lot of shonen, there's like a little bit of apprehension, both in showing female characters getting hurt, and the bigger thing, showing female characters beating people up. Because there's kind of a perception that if you have a woman getting beat up, well, and this isn't entirely without merit, but there's a perception that if you have a woman getting beat up, then you're kind of like, then that's kind of sexist.
Well,
it can be sexist
when you're using it for like torture porn.
Yeah, when you're gratuitously constantly. Actually, I was kind of thinking about it. Steins Gate does this a little bit with like just have a female character die over and over and over and over again, not for to tell her story, but to tell the story of the man who suffers on her behalf, right? That can definitely be, or just like you have a woman get like beaten or assaulted, because if a man gets beaten or assaulted, it's even worse when it happens to a woman, right? Like, yeah. But that doesn't mean that no woman can ever be shown to be involved in hardship, right? Like that sexism is contextual.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the one thing. But like the bigger thing is that there's a worry that like.
Well, I mean, I even think of it like there are shows I have had the misfortune of seeing that go so far as take a woman suffering and eroticize it. And that's very different from having a woman just be a combatant.
Oh yeah. Oh, that just reminds me of like the trial scene in Shield Hero, where like they like torture her to like get her to confess to all her sins, and like the entire time like her like breast piece is like falling out, and it's one of the most it's one of the most fucking disgusting things I've ever seen. And the Shield Hero fans, okay, I won't be on this for too long. The Shield Hero fans were mad that it didn't go far enough because it was apparently worse in the source material. The Shield Hero fans are unhinged. That's all I have to say about that. But the other thing about the trap that's I think a little bit more insidious is the idea that like if you do show a woman that's like strong, then like a male audience won't like that character because it's like not a woman's place to be stronger than like a man, or it's like intimidating in a way to have like a woman have power over like your male lead or whatever. And again, that's sort of true in the sense that culturally speaking, we want men to be like over women, and it's like emasculating to be a man in a position where like a woman is stronger than you. And there's kind of like, okay, well, if there's like a super strong girl in like the female cast, then that's like constantly emasculating for the viewer, I guess, if he wants to accept the absolute like batshit standards that we have and not challenge them in any way, then sure, okay. But if you do want to challenge them, then like that's like absolute nonsense, right? Like we should be able to have competent female characters and not like worry about them.
Yep.
In that sort of way. Okay. So my thing is I've watched too many anime this season. I'm gonna cut back for next season because it's actually kind of ridiculous.
Admirable.
So some things to point out. Rapid fire. King's Raid is on. Quite honestly, I meme about it on Twitter with like the orc count. Did we end up explaining the orc count on CWT?
Not on CWT. We explained it in our Discord live stream.
Oh yeah. Okay. So for some of you who will be unaware, the orc count is basically me and Ragva were watching King's Raid to kind of, because it was kind of on our radar for potential like fascist bait. Luckily, I don't think it actually ended up being so, but it was on our radar. So we watched the first couple episodes, and then there was like this one episode where like describing the history of the world, and they talked about like the humans, the dark elves, the regular elves, and the orcs, and how they all work together to defeat the Dark Lord. But we never saw the orcs. And it was weird. They would be like blah blah blah, and then created an alliance with the elves.
They talked about the elves, and then they showed the elves, and they talked about the orcs, and then they showed more elves. It was
and so Raghu was like, "Wait, why aren't there orcs?" And I was like, "What?" And they were like, "Yeah, there's like no orcs." And I was like, "Wait, go back." So we went back, and there were no orcs. And so I tweeted like, "Where are the orcs?" And then we watched the rest of the episode waiting for an orc, and we didn't see a single orc. I think
I was like, "We're going to watch this episode. There are going to be no orcs."
And I was like, "Nah, there's no way."
At that point, I was honestly, legitimately expecting there to be orcs in the next episode. Mm-hmm. And I think we're like 3 to 4 episodes from that point, and there still haven't been orcs.
I think even more, and there still hasn't been a single orc. So I mean, every once in a while, my Twitter profile will be like either like orc catcher or like hunting for orcs or something, and I'll like post another thread about like this time there will be orcs, and there's never any orcs. So that's
a very weird thing to not have.
Yeah,
it's a very like no one would care if like they just never said there were orcs, but they said there were orcs, and then
I get it, and it's weird because like it's one of those like European fantasy settings, like without any like dark skinned characters either. So I wonder if like they hid the orcs because the orcs are like horribly racist or something. That's like my current.
Oh no!
Like we're gonna see the orcs, and it's gonna be like
Oh,
Terraformers Part 2 or something. I have no idea and I'm not gonna look at the source material. I want to be surprised about the orcs, but aside from the absolute meme that is the orc count, King's Raid is a very boring show. It's not worth it. If it was not for the orc count, I would have just dropped it. So there's that.
But is it getting those clicks though?
The orc count threads do surprisingly well.
Oh no!
Like when I was,
Oh no!
like I know.
Oh no!
Like I was surprised like when I was talking to Soviet and he was like, "Oh yeah, I saw your orc count threads." I was like, "Really?" But yeah, they do pretty well. What else? I watched, and we've yet to watch this together, but we should. By recommendation, I watched Akudama Drive, and it is pretty good. I think because Rog and I have like 3 good shows, I'm pretty sure if we watched Akudama Drive together, we'd have a 4th good show. It's like not as talked about as some of the other stuff, which is interesting to me because it's just like.
I find it interesting that it exists and is by Uchikoshi.
Mm-hmm.
Uchikoshi, of course, being Kotaro Uchikoshi, who wrote 9 Hours, 9 Persons, 9 Doors, Virtue's Last Reward, and Zero Time Dilemma, and now AI The Simonium Files, all of which I think are pretty good.
Right. It's a cyberpunk story, and as cyberpunk by definition is like capitalism on steroids, and there's basically 2 directions that you can go with cyberpunk. You can go with 80s Reagan war on crime shit, which is basically like the criminals have overrun society and we need a strong authoritarian hand to clean up these streets, and also the foreigners are out competing us. And then there's also like the socialism cyberpunk, which is we got this way because capitalism screwed us over and we should stop doing capitalism, please. Akudama Drive, it's definitely more on the socialist side than it is on the Reagan side, which is good. I'm a little bit skeptical. It's hard to explain without like getting into spoilers, but I'm a little bit skeptical so basically it follows a group of criminals and their kind of opposition to hyper-militarized police that does public execution of said criminals to like keep them off the streets. And there's a little bit like there are some sympathetic characters on the cop side, but like the cops are definitely the bad guys, which is a good thing. I'm skeptical because a lot of the people on the criminal side are just like evil. Like there's a dude who just like who's definitely like suffering from mental illness who just like kills people because it's fun. And there's just other people who are just like who just kill people for no reason. And if it were not that the story frames them sympathetically, you could almost understand why there is a police force if the criminals just go out and commit crime because it's fun, right? I would have much preferred the criminals are for. And then, by the way, some of the criminals in the show are like this. But if it was made more clear that the people commit crimes because of the socioeconomic system that the police defend, and thus it's the police that are the problem and not like the inherent violence of the criminals, then it would be a much better show. But it's still very good. That's where my head is at with it. We have to watch it together. I think we'd have more thoughts if we put our brains together.
We would, but also we need time. Well,
yeah.
Imagine how nice it would be if we could just like take a day off and do nothing but watch anime.
Oh, that'd be so great. Soon,
Soon.
hopefully. I guess I'll do one or two more. I don't have anything new on Moriarty because we're really behind on it.
Well, yeah, that's entirely my vibes plus finance.
Yeah, I mean, I've got him next week too. So, we've got goodness. I haven't watched more than that. What have I been wasting my time with? Oh, I guess I like caught up on Sigdrafa for like no reason. Warlords of. It's like it's the show that the author of ReZero had like a heavy hand in making. It. Listen, I'm just here because a lot of people said the show was gonna be like really, really, really good because it was written by the person who wrote ReZero, which they claim is good, but it's actually kind of disappointing, and I just feel superior to other people because I've just never liked ReZero. But in all honesty, it's just kind of okay. And by kind of okay, I don't mean passable. I mean kind of okay, as in you can skip it. There's supposed to be like a war happening, and there's a war that only cute teenage girls in World War II fighter planes can fix, because reasons. Yeah, and like I guess the weird thing about it is that so there are these pillars that are like erected across the world that like terraform, and they're like monsters that come out that like kill lots of people. So like all of Europe basically has had to like flee into Asia because of these pillars, right? These pillars are like a menace to humanity. They kill untold amounts of people. And so you would think that a show about the people who fight the pillars on behalf of humanity would like focus on the relationship between like the soldiers and like the civilians, right? Is it purely like a protective relationship? Is there like an abuse of power going on? At the very least, if you don't want to focus on any of that societal shit, how does it feel to be a soldier and to have the weight of the world and like the protection of millions of like powerless people in your hands? The show does not find any of these things interesting, and it just refuses to talk about them. Instead, it will do like fucking weird like meta swimsuit hijinks, and then sometimes it'll talk a lot about how the characters feel about each other. But all the characters are child soldiers. It will never talk about like, okay, what about like the other people who like exist in this world, right? And that's just it's not unsurprising coming from the person who wrote ReZero, because ReZero does like the exact same thing. Like you've seen my felt video, right?
Yeah.
Like yeah, it's like a problem he has. Gosh, do I do one more? Oh yeah, Fire Force real quick, and then we're over. Fire Force. I was kind of excited because I thought Fire Force was gonna do an anti-capitalism, and then it like didn't. There was like a corporation that like employs 72% of this empire, and they have like shady connections with like people in power and stuff like that. And it was like, ooh, is it gonna like criticize like corporate hegemony and power? But then it turned out the corporation just had like nothing to do with it whatsoever. And yeah, they're a shady corporation, but they're not like explicitly connected with the bad guys. I think it was like, well, our corporation is so large that of course some of our people will be affiliated with the bad guys. You can't blame us. And they were like, yeah, that makes sense. And so when that was the end of that arc, I was like, okay, bye. Why am I here? It was building up to it, and it just okay. I think that's about, if we went down every single show that I was loosely keeping up with. Our Last Crusade rips off Fate. That's all. Like if we did every single show, we'd be here forever.
Wait,
but...
it rips off Fate?
Oh yeah, I was
sounded,
watching it.
I thought it was just ripping off Sword Art Online. It's also ripping off Fate?
Yeah, like big time. I have to show you some of like the latter episodes, but like, I haven't seen Fate, so I can't like explain it to you too well. But like one of the side characters is like named the same, and like a lot of the character dynamics are named the same. Some of the fight scenes are like the same. There's like an antagonist that's very, very similar. Yeah, it's just Fate again. You should just watch Fate instead. Don't watch Our Last Crusade. What are we doing?
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway,
if the question was, instead of anime of the year, manga of the year, the manga I started reading this year that I've been really into is Handyman Saito in Another World. I think that like after the dust has settled, and I've been thoroughly disappointed by the other one I was reading. Well, only kind of, but whatever. After I got into a better mental state, I think Handyman Saito in Another World is really cool, and it's got that great socialist undertones. And it's pretty cute.
Yeah. I've read a couple of chapters with you. It's like,
You should get it.
it really holds up.
I like it. Anyway.
Okay. So yeah, that being said, thanks so much for listening. Keep an eye out for our very special Darling in the Franxx episode coming sooner than it is right now, since we're recording this in the past for the people listening in the present. If you like this, like we mentioned, make sure to join our Discord. If you would be so generous as to support us financially, you can with the Patreon link in the description. You can follow both of us on Twitter. You can look out for some of our other projects. I've been slowly but surely chipping away at my 2020 backlog. The goal is definitely to get Bullshit No Yusha 2.5, 3, and 4 out the door by the time 2020 ends, as well as a video on the Ethiopia conflict and Misfitted Demon Academy, which that essay is finally written. Thank you so much, Rocco, for reading it. It's going to be very great when it's edited and recorded and stuff. That's all for me. If you have anything that's coming up on your end,
Nothing soon is what I want to say. Eventually, I will be done with everything else I have to do, and I'll be able to focus more thoroughly on things, but for now, nothing right now.
Well, that being said, I'm Mo Black. My pronouns are he, him, and his.
And I'm Agama. My pronouns are anything other than he or she.
And we'll see you soon. Thanks so much for listening.